He wasn't supposed to be a legend, just another number behind bars. Most prisoners enter jail quietly, disappear into a cell, and are soon forgotten by the world outside. But not this man. From the moment he walked through the iron gates, there was something different about him. A spark that prison walls couldn't dim, a presence that even hardened criminals noticed. He wasn't just here to serve time. He was about to change the very system that locked him up. Born in the narrow alleys of an overpopulated city, this man, let's call him Zahir, grew up surrounded by chaos. His neighborhood was known for two things: poverty and crime. By the time he was 16, he already had a file in the local police station. By 25, he was accused of a daring armed robbery that left the city stunned. It wasn't just the crime that shocked people, it was how cleanly it was executed. No traces, no fingerprints, no mistakes. The law finally caught up with him 2 years later. Thanks to an anonymous tip-off, Zahir was sentenced to 22 years in a maximum security prison. To the system, he was now just inmate number 8702. But the moment he entered those high-security gates, the prison began to feel different. Unlike most new inmates who try to keep their heads down and avoid trouble, Zahir walked in like he owned the place. He didn't act tough, didn't start fights, and didn't beg for protection. But something about him made people uneasy. He was calm, too calm, observant, silent, the kind of silence that fills a room with tension. At first, the prison authorities dismissed him as just another street-smart criminal. He had no political connections, no gang affiliations, just a sharp mind and a cold stare. But within a month, they started noticing odd things. The guards found him reading books in the library that no one else touched. Law books, psychology, prison history. He asked questions most inmates didn't dare ask. What happens if an inmate files a complaint against a warden? Who checks the security cameras? How often are the routines audited? He made friends slowly, choosing his circle carefully: former bank employees, a computer hacker, even a retired school teacher doing time for fraud. These weren't muscle, they were minds. Soon, inmates started going to him for advice. He helped one write an appeal that got him released 6 months early. He solved arguments between rival cell blocks without a single punch being thrown. He had information no one else seemed to have. Some said he was spying. Others believed he had dirt on everyone. The wardens couldn't figure him out. He wasn't violent. He followed rules, technically. But he had influence, and that made him dangerous. Still, there was nothing on paper that could justify isolating him or moving him. He was hiding in plain sight, playing by the book, while slowly rewriting it. Zahir's cell was always spotless. He kept a daily routine: exercises at dawn, reading after breakfast, quiet reflections at night. But beneath that discipline, something was brewing. You could feel it in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. One senior guard later recalled, "I thought he was the easiest prisoner I ever had." Turns out he was watching all of us. Every step, every mistake. Every weak point. Zahir didn't try to dominate the jail through violence. He did it through strategy. And while most prisoners spent their nights staring at the ceiling or dreaming of freedom, Zahir was doing something else. He was planning. And what he planned would make prison history. The man who bent the system without breaking it. It started small, almost invisible, like a quiet shift in the wind. A favor here, a suggestion there. At first, Zahir seemed like just another inmate trying to survive. But slowly, he became the man other prisoners looked to when things got tense. He didn't act like a leader. He didn't have a gang behind him or a violent history that demanded fear. Instead, Zahir operated with something far more dangerous: respect. One of the first things he did was offer help. Real help. He offered to write letters for illiterate inmates, appeals, complaints, even personal messages to family. In a place where most men were forgotten by the outside world, this simple gesture meant everything. Word spread: go to Zahir, he'll sort it out. And he always did. When fights broke out between rival cells, Zahir didn't join in. He waited, observed. Then later, he'd speak quietly to both sides. suggest compromises, and somehow, like magic, the conflict would dissolve. The guards didn't mind at first. Anything that reduced violence made their jobs easier, but they underestimated what was really happening. Zahir wasn't calming chaos, he was managing power. He started gaining small privileges, not because he demanded them, but because staff began trusting him. They let him organize the prison library. They allowed him to tutor inmates for their GED exams. Eventually, he was even asked to assist in the record room. It was all official, all legal, but it gave him something no inmate should ever have: access. With access came information, and Zahir was a master of using it. He learned which guards showed up late, which cameras had blind spots, when meal carts were moved, how often the outer gates were inspected. He never said anything directly, never raised alarms, but he remembered everything. Inmates began to follow his lead, copying his discipline. He discouraged drugs, fights, and gambling, not because he cared about morals, but because he needed a controlled environment. He knew chaos could draw attention, and attention was the one thing he couldn't afford. It wasn't long before even senior inmates, men with years of jail time behind them, were asking for his advice. He created a quiet hierarchy, not based on strength or fear, but logic and loyalty. He gave people purpose, jobs, responsibilities. He turned criminals into administrators. One prisoner later told investigators, "It felt like we were part of something bigger, like a company, and Zahir was the CEO." By the 6th month, Zahir had changed the daily rhythm of the jail. Morning fights became morning meetings. Smuggled phones stopped ringing. Even the guards noticed fewer complaints and cleaner records. Some thought he had reformed. Others thought he was just a smart manipulator, but no one truly understood what he was building, because Zahir kept his real plan buried deep beneath routine. He asked questions, always carefully. Where does the water come from? Who controls the gate mechanisms? Can you fix the electric timer system yourself, or does someone come from outside? Every answer was stored, analyzed, cross-checked. If Zahir had a superpower, it was patience. He didn't act on impulse. He waited, listened, watched. And he always wore that same calm expression. Not arrogant, not afraid, just aware. Like he was 2 moves ahead in a chess game no one else realized they were playing by now. Some guards were suspicious. A few warned their superiors, but the official reports showed nothing unusual. No fights, no contraband. Good behavior. Productive inmate. What they didn't see was that Zahir had become the system inside the system. He didn't need to break rules to change them. He simply bent them, subtly, quietly, until the jail started to operate on his logic, not the state's. It was only a matter of time before he made his next move. And that move would be unlike anything the prison had ever seen. A system rewritten from the inside. By now, Zahir wasn't just surviving the prison system, he was reshaping it. It didn't happen overnight, and it didn't look like a revolution. But in the controlled, rigid environment of a maximum security jail, even the smallest changes send ripples, and Zahir knew exactly where to place the first stone. The prison had a set of rules: strict schedules, curfews, restricted access zones. Every inmate knew what could and couldn't be done. But Zahir began to find the gray areas. He understood something most inmates overlooked. Rules could be followed, but still controlled. For instance, he noticed that the prison kitchen disposed of food waste in the back alley every Thursday, supervised by only one guard. He wasn't interested in the trash, but in the schedule, the patterns, the weak spots. He didn't use this knowledge right away. He just took note. One observation at a time. Soon, Zahir began suggesting improvements to the jail system, subtle ideas wrapped in the language of cooperation. "Sir, the literacy program would run smoother if I could assist in logging student progress. Wouldn't it be more efficient to allow certain inmates to handle low-risk paperwork, harmless suggestions?" Cleverly framed. And the staff, eager for smoother operations, agreed. Before long, Zahir had managed to gain light administrative access to internal processes. He wasn't forging documents. He was entering names into attendance logs, organizing book records, even helping track inventory. But these weren't random tasks. They were test runs. He was measuring how much he could do, how far he could go, without raising suspicion. And the results were stunning. Zahir rewrote the flow of prison life through influence, not rebellion. He didn't need to fight the system. He just became part of it. A trusted worker, a helpful hand, a familiar face. He also trained others. Quietly, privately, he'd tell inmates how to behave, when to speak, when to stay silent. He coached them to look like model prisoners. And in return, he built a silent, loyal team. Not a gang, not a brotherhood. An operation, each person had a task. One controlled library keys, another monitored the yard, one memorized the guard rotation, all legal, all invisible, no violence, no threats, just coordination and silence. One of the most critical systems Zahir manipulated was the maintenance schedule. He learned that electrical repairs were outsourced once a month. He began tracking those dates obsessively. He even offered to assist the technician with lifting tools or translating for the inmates. It was a small favor, but it bought him knowledge: how tools entered the facility, which locks were bypassed, and which screws were loosened during inspections. Over time, Zahir found out something crucial. The prison's camera system had a minor software glitch that caused a 1-minute blackout during automatic reboots. It wasn't listed in reports. No one thought it was dangerous. But to Zahir, it was the equivalent of a door left unlocked. Still, he didn't act, not yet. He refined the system. He rehearsed movements inside the jail. He drilled his team on timings, distractions, cleanups. It was all hypothetical, until it wasn't. By now, rumors began to stir. A few staff members whispered, "He's too smart for this place." One warden even said, "If that man wanted to escape, he probably already knows how." But without hard proof, no one acted. Because on paper, Zahir remained perfect, helpful, respectful, clean record. But beneath that surface, the stage was set. Zahir hadn't just found a loophole, he had built one, piece by piece, from inside the machine. And now, the system he had quietly rewritten was about to become his escape route. An escape hidden in plain sight. For months, the prison had been running smoother than ever. Fewer fights, more cooperation, quieter halls. The warden called it a golden period. But what no one realized was that this calm wasn't peace. It was preparation. Zahir had spent more than a year laying the groundwork. Every shift he helped cover, every form he filed, every broken light bulb he noted, it was all part of something bigger. He wasn't escaping through chaos. He was escaping through order. And then came the day it began like any other. Breakfast at 6 a.m., roll call, scheduled chores. Zahir was assigned to assist the visiting maintenance team repairing wiring near the storage corridor. Nothing unusual. He had done it before. A small group of inmates, closely monitored, supervised by 2 guards. But this time, every step had been rehearsed. The moment of opportunity came just after 10:14 a.m. That's when the prison's camera system rebooted. Something that happened every 48 hours for system updates. Normally, it caused only a minor flicker on the security feed. 1 minute of blackout, harmless, unnoticeable. But Zahir had timed his entire plan to that 1 minute. In that moment, as one of his crew staged a minor fall across the yard to distract a roaming guard, Zahir slipped behind a rolling cabinet in the corridor. This cabinet had been moved countless times, always returned to the same wall, next to a vent panel that Zahir had unscrewed and resecured dozens of times over the past few months. Now, the screws were loose. The panel came off in seconds. Inside was a narrow utility shaft. He had measured it. Practiced crawling through similar spaces during night hours. He knew it led to a locked storeroom once used for old furniture, abandoned and rarely checked. By 10:15 a.m., the cameras were back online. Zahir was already gone. In the storeroom, hidden behind rusted lockers, was a guard's uniform. Not smuggled in, but repurposed. An old, discarded one from laundry that he'd quietly cleaned, repaired, and altered over weeks. He dressed quickly, tucked in his badge, a replica made with the help of a talented forger he befriended, and waited. At 10:27 a.m., a supply van was scheduled to leave through the back gate, something Zahir had logged in the system himself 2 days earlier. He had ensured that the inventory check would be done by a junior staffer, someone new, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. Zahir emerged from the storeroom, clipboard in hand, jacket zipped up, and walked confidently toward the loading zone. No one stopped him. Why would they? He looked the part, moved with purpose, nodded at the right people, even joked with one of the real guards about a long day ahead. He climbed into the back of the van, slid behind a stack of folded linens, and waited. At 10:34 a.m., the gate buzzed open. The van rolled out, and just like that, Zahir, prisoner number 8702, was gone. It took 7 hours before anyone noticed. At first, the guards assumed he was still in the maintenance zone, then in the library, then helping in the medical wing. His name was everywhere because he had made sure it would be. Logs were forged. His team followed backup instructions to keep the illusion alive. By the time the warden declared a full lockdown, Zahir was already miles away, clothes changed, papers in hand, and a route planned. The media called it the cleanest prison break in national history. Officials were left stunned. How did a prisoner, unarmed, unaided from outside, under constant surveillance, walk out of a high-security facility without triggering a single alarm? The answer was simple. He didn't escape from the system. He escaped through it. The man who vanished and left the system exposed. When the news broke, it didn't feel real. Maximum security inmate escapes without force or violence. No breakout, no tunnel, no hostages, just gone. The headlines were surreal. Within 24 hours, Zahir became a media sensation, a ghost, a genius, a criminal mastermind. Everyone wanted answers, but all they had were questions and an empty cell. The warden who once praised Zahir's helpfulness now stood red-faced before reporters. This was not a failure of security, he insisted. This was manipulation at the highest level. But it was a failure, and not just of locks and cameras. It was a failure of assumption. The public was stunned. For years, movies and stories had dramatized prison breaks with explosions, gunfights, and tunnels dug with spoons. But Zahir's escape? It had no drama. It was quiet, calculated, and terrifyingly efficient. As the investigation unfolded, a full picture of his escape began to emerge. His role in the maintenance teams, his access to logs, the forged forms, the camera timing. But the most alarming realization was this. Zahir had done nothing illegal inside the prison until the moment he stepped out. No bribes, no violence, no weapons, just strategy. The prison board called for a full internal audit. Careers were ruined, several guards were suspended. Some were accused of willful negligence, though most were simply fooled by his charm and intelligence. One report even noted, inmate number 8702 was more organized than half our administrative staff. Authorities launched a nationwide manhunt. Borders were alerted. Fake identity databases were scanned. But Zahir had planned for this too. He hadn't just escaped physically, he had erased his trail. Surveillance footage was minimal. His fake ID was flawless. Rumors placed him in Karachi, then Iran, then Eastern Europe. But nothing stuck. It was like he had disappeared into smoke. Meanwhile, the legend grew. TV channels ran documentaries. Experts debated his intelligence. Psychologists called him a high-functioning strategist with sociopathic control. Social media branded him the invisible escape artist. For some, he became a villain. For others, a dark symbol of rebellion against broken systems. In prison circles, Zahir's name became code for control. Inmates spoke of him like a myth. Play the long game, like Zahir. Some guards quietly admitted, "We'll never trust a quiet prisoner again." But beyond the sensational headlines, Zahir's escape left a scar on the system. His actions forced authorities to confront a painful truth. Security isn't just about bars and fences, it's about the people inside and the systems they learn to control. Policies changed. New regulations were drafted across multiple prisons. Inmates could no longer be given administrative roles. All maintenance access required dual staff supervision. Security system logs were now independently reviewed weekly. Backgrounds of inmates with high education or organizational skills were reassessed for internal risk levels. What Zahir achieved wasn't just a prison break, it was an institutional awakening. He proved that the most dangerous prisoner isn't the one with a weapon, it's the one with a plan. As for Zahir, he was never found. Whispers continued for years. Some claimed he underwent surgery and changed his face. Others said he was living on a remote island, funded by the spoils of his earlier crimes. A few believed he died shortly after escaping. But the truth? Nobody knows. And maybe that's exactly how Zahir wanted it. Because in the end, his greatest escape wasn't just from prison. It was from the story itself.